All right, so we're going to continue where we left off yesterday. Yesterday we were talking about making coffee, and the challenge of making tea and coffee on Shabbat is we're talking about using hot liquids, and they make a significant difference in what we have. So are we allowed to make coffee and tea and so on? That's the question that we've been talking about. Yesterday we talked about coffee, and coffee was a little easier because the coffee grounds that we use, the coffee mix that we use, is pre-cooked usually. It's already somehow cooked. So the principle of in bishul, har bishul applies, that those coffee grounds or whatever we're using, you're not cooking them when you put hot water on them. So therefore, it's not such a problem because it's already cooked. And that's what we said. So making coffee is a lot easier. I still have to get back to on the coffee, grinding the coffee, as to whether or not you're allowed to do that on Shabbat itself, but not yourself. You can't do it, but to have the timer or something do that. So I have to look into that. I didn't have a chance to do that yesterday. So that's something that I want to look up. Just specifically on the coffee in general, it's not a problem. Tea is a different problem because tea, generally, we don't look at the tea leaves that we use as cooked beforehand. Meaning, how do we make tea? We take some version of a tea leaf either in the bag or just plain leaves and put them in hot water. So it seems like that's the first time that's being cooked. If that's the first time that that's being cooked, so now we have problems, and now we have concerns as to whether or not we're allowed to use that or not. So, there's a lot of different opinions on this, and it surrounds itself as to whether or not tea leaves are what's called kaleh habishul. They are things that are easily cooked or not. If something is easily cooked, then we have to be careful about how we use it. We may not even put it into hot water. Right? So there's differences of opinions. I'm going to tell you the most lenient opinion, which is actually the opinion that I follow. It's the opinion of Rabbi Matlu Babadi, alav shalom. We know he was a major posek in our community, and it's his opinion, which maybe isn't adopted by everyone, is accepted by many. And his opinion is really simple. He says this is not kaleh habishul. In fact, he says he says the tea, not just a straight leaf, it's processed and might even be considered cooked, and might even be like the coffee where you could put it straight into the hot water, while it's on the fire or something like that, because it's already cooked. But he doesn't go that far. What he says to do is to make sure that you're putting the tea bag or the tea leaf in what we called kli sheni. And kli sheni is that secondary utensil, right? So actually, give me a second. I'm just gonna look for a file that I have which will show this a little bit. Just give me 1 second. Sorry, just 1 second. Okay, I'm just opening something up that I think will just demonstrate it. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to share my screen. Just give me 1 second. Hold on. Okay, so in order to understand what we're talking about, I know we talked about it yesterday, but I want to be careful, right? We're talking about the idea of kli, of boiling, right? So there's different types of kelim on Shabbat. So here you have a picture of the fire that's part of a stove, right? So the fire is part of the stove, right? Esh means fire, tanur means a stove. And when we place a pot on there and we put water in it, that pot becomes what we call kli dishon, right? And what makes it kli dishon? One, it was sitting on the fire. Two, because it was sitting on the fire, the utensil itself, not only what's in it, the utensil itself is very hot and has the capability of affecting that which is placed in it. So even if you take the kli off the fire, right, I remove it from the fire, it remains what we call kli rishon, and that is a very significant detail. Now, kli sheni is a pot or a cup or some utensil that was not on the fire, right? And it received, kli sheni received hot water from a kli rishon, right? That's what a kli sheni is. Right? Rishon is first, sheni is second. So if you receive from the first pot, the water in there could be very hot. It could be just as hot. In some situations, it could be more hot. It's not about that. The utensil itself is not hot on its own. It only receives heat and only has heat because of what's in it. Now, there's one other item which is called irui mikli rishon. Irui is the stuff that's being poured out, like as it's in transition, right? And to compare, right? Just picture you're pouring the water out of the pot. The water as it's in air, right? What is it considered? Is it considered in the first pot or in the second or in the cup, right? And it has its own categorization, right? And that's why we call it irui mikli rishon. And now sometimes we'll even use the term kli shlishi, and kli shlishi means a third pot. What is a third pot? A third pot is a pot that received from a utensil that received, right? So it's like a double step, right? So kli rishon, it was on the fire. Kli sheni, it received from on the fire, but it was never on the fire. Kli shlishi is it wasn't on the fire and it received from another one. And then obviously there's irui mikli sheni, right? So this is something to keep in mind as we go forward, right? So on coffee, we said, even in kli rishon, it's not a problem, and irui mikli rishon is not a problem. So for coffee, what we were saying is you could put the coffee grounds in the kli sheni, and you could pour onto it from kli rishon, no problem, right? That's what we said for coffee, and even potentially putting the coffee in kli rishon is not a problem. That was one of the things that we said. With tea, we're saying no. With tea, we're saying you can't put the tea in the kli rishon, and you can't even pour onto the tea from the kli rishon. What do you have to do? You have to first create a kli sheni circumstance. A kli sheni circumstance means that you pour it out of the kli rishon, you put it into the kli sheni. Now you could put the tea bag into the kli sheni. That's the opinion of Rabbi Matlu Babadi. Even though some of the great other rabbis may disagree, they respect where he's coming from, and they say that if you're following him, what we call yesh amal l'smoch, you have what to rely upon, and that's what we teach in the Bet Knesset, and it's allowed. But I am telling you, it's in the world, it's considered a more lenient opinion. Most opinions will tell you you have to take the extra step of going to the kli shlishi, right? So Rabbi Ovadia Yosef and his sons Yitzhak Yosef, David Yosef will tell you kli sheni is not enough. You have to go to kli shlishi, meaning that you'll see what will they do? They'll take from the kettle, they'll pour into a cup, and then they'll pour into another cup, and then they'll put the tea bag in the cup. Right? Now, the truth is, Rabbi Abadi's opinion actually makes more sense, because what's the difference between cup 2 and cup 3? Not really anything, because what's the reason why cup 2 is allowed is because the cup doesn't create any heat. And that's true of kli sheni, and it's true of kli shlishi. So kli shlishi is really just a symbolic step that they tell you to take. But as I said, there are many opinions that will tell you to take the kli shlishi, that third utensil, that extra step. So if someone wants to take that extra step, it's certainly something that you could do. Any questions on what I said so far? I have more to go, but I just want to, this is a complicated thing. I wanted to make sure that this is clear based on the images that you have in front of you, and any questions that you might have. Anyone have anything or not? Just, give me a nod or a thumbs up. We're good. Yeah, great. Okay, awesome. Good. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Well, you know what? Let me hold it for 1 second. Now, there's one other thing that people like to do with tea, and this you'll see the Ashkenazim do a lot. And they do they make what we call essence. And essence, if you've ever been with Ashkenazim on Shabbat, what do? They make the tea from before Shabbat, right? And they take a lot of tea bags, put them in a cup from beforehand, and heavily concentrate them And what do? You add, you already have the tea, and you take that and you add the hot water into that, not from the Kli Rishon, either in the Kli Sheni or the Kli Shlishi. Different opinions will apply, but what they're basically doing is they're saying they want to make sure that you've cooked the tea beforehand. They're concerned that even in Kli Shlishi, the tea could get cooked. So you have to cook it from beforehand, and they do it in like a very heavily concentrated thing, and then you take from that little liquid and you pour it in. I don't recommend that. I recommend what I said, which is use the Kli Sheni, then you put the tea bag in the Kli Sheni, and you're good. So that's my recommendation. You want to be more machmir, you could use the Kli Shlishi. But if you want to recognize that what a lot of other people do, a lot of people will use what we call that essence concept, where they've pre-cooked the tea from before Shabbat in heavily concentrated mode. And then since it's pre-cooked, so they'll add some hot water to it, but only in a Kli Sheni or a Kli Shlishi, because you can't put it in the Kli Rishon because it's liquid. So you can't, it's already liquefied. So you can't even do that. So it's complicated. Tea is one of the most complicated and tricky areas of law on Shabbat. And it's interesting because it's so common, right? People love to drink tea. People, I'm sitting here with my cup right now. It's like a regular everyday thing that we like to have. And on Shabbat, for sure, who doesn't love that cup of tea after a Friday night dinner or a Shabbat lunch? So you have to know what you're going to do and know what your opinion is. So again, just to quickly repeat, we've talked about 3 opinions, right? The most lenient opinion, which is the one I advocate and that I follow, and is according to Chamat Lubavadi, is just make sure you use Kli Sheni, right? That's it. As long as it's not on the fire or receiving directly from the fire onto the tea, you're fine. That's according to Rabbi Lubavadi. According to Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, David Yosef, Yitzhak Yosef, and many others, so you shouldn't do Kli Sheni. You should make sure to pour into the next cup, Kli Shlishi, and then put the tea bag in. So that's opinion number 2. And opinion number 3, which is a very prevalent opinion, is you have to pre-cook the tea from before Shabbat. You do it in a heavily concentrated mode, and then you pour out a little bit into it, and then in a Kli Shlishi, you'll pour on top of that. Okay? So all that is a review for what we did. I know it's complicated, but so be it. Okay. By the way, you'll notice. Yeah, go ahead.
So are you familiar with, you probably not, but French press coffee, where you take coffee grinds, you put it in a mug, you'll pour hot water over it, or the reverse, you can put hot water in a mug and then put coffee grinds on top of it, and then you press it down. Familiar?
I'm not familiar with it. So what happens next? I mean, so far it sounds okay because the grinds have probably been roasted or baked beforehand, so it should be no problem.
Okay, that's it.
It should be no problem. Yeah, no, that's similar to what we were talking about before. The only thing that I owe an answer to, which I just did, I think it's okay, but I want to double check, is can I have the grinds automatically ground on Shabbat? Meaning I can't grind them. I could tell you can't grind the coffee on Shabbat. There's a different melacha called tochen, which is to grind something, to pound it into a flour. You're not allowed to do that. But can I have it set up from beforehand that the timer will grind it? I think it's okay, but I want to just double check. There's something in my head saying that it is not okay. So I just want to look it up, and I just didn't have a chance yesterday.
Rabbi, I have one question.
Yeah, sure.
Going back.
Joe, I like the birds in the background, Joe. They're so loud, I can't hear Avi. Go ahead, Avi.
I'm sorry, I'll mute you.
No, it's okay. It's beautiful. I wish I was there.
Okay, the Hamid, I know I learned, I don't know by who, whatever, is that there's a way that you could heat the Hamid if you maybe put it on a cold blech, which is not on yet, and the timer goes on after. Is that able to do? I know there's a leniency somewhere, and I'm trying to rack
in general, if it's liquid, we're not so lenient. Even if it's timer or not, it's I guess if you didn't put it on, it was there from before. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. If you're not putting it on the fire, does that make it more lenient? Does that make it something that would be allowed? I'd have to think about that one as well. But in general, that's where we don't do the liquids. And in general, so for the lunch, you don't, for the Friday night, it's easy because it's on from before. But on the lunchtime where you're putting it back on, it's a lot more complicated. And in general, that's one of the things that we're pretty strict on is you don't reheat liquids. To reheat the liquid is a problem. So I'm curious if you take that extra step of you didn't put it on and then the timer did it, and that, I don't know. I have to think about that one. I haven't seen it written anywhere, and I don't remember anyone. I don't remember hearing it. So for now, I'm going to say I don't have a yes to that one. Okay. You may have noticed that I wasn't reading from the book at any point over the last little bit because, again, there's different opinions, and his starting point is from a more strict opinion than what we normally start from. So I didn't use the book for that. But now, listen, I'm going to go back to what he has to say, and you'll see actually that the opinion that we follow actually kind of makes sense. Look what he says. He says, "Mutar latet ale mint el toch kos techam, afal pi sheyad soledepo v'chena menhag." He says you are allowed to take a mint leaf and put it into a cup of hot water or into a cup of tea, which is interesting because if you don't follow chamat lub, why would you be allowed to do that? It's the same thing, right? You're taking what's the difference between the mint leaf and the tea leaf? Why should it be different, right? So I could tell you why they think it's different. They think it's different because they think that the tea more easily cooks than the mint leaf. But sorry, I don't always accept everything that everyone says. So I don't buy that. I think that a tea leaf and a mint leaf are very, very similar in how they get cooked and how they get boiled, and so be it. So that's my opinion. Again, just to support this is that would be allowed. Okay.
Rabbi, the tea
yes.
leaf, the mint leaf, you have to boil it several minutes so you can get the taste. If you put it in hot water, it won't give you any taste. You have to leave it for a long period of time. And boil it.
I don't know about that.
That's the way. No, I know it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then I stand corrected.
The taste right away.
Then I stand corrected. I don't know. I feel like you put the mint leaf in, put the tea leaf in. It takes a minute each one. But if I'm wrong, so be it. And that would be a
bit of taste. But more you boil it, the taste will come. That's
more. Okay. So maybe that's why. Maybe that's where it comes from. It's true of the tea also, right? Meaning, if you put the tea in for 30 seconds, you get a certain degree of taste. If you put the tea in for 2 minutes, you get much richer taste. But I guess what you're saying is that the mint needs even more time than that. Right. So maybe that makes a difference. And okay, that would make a difference. So if it takes longer for mint to do that, so then there you go. And that's why it's a different view than from the other opinions. Okay. Interesting. Next case. What about pouring or putting something into my tea? Remember, we said you don't want to put liquid into the tea, right? You don't want to put liquid into hot water, right? So what about something that a lot of us like to do, which is to put lemon into tea, right? So he says, and he's quoting here the Ben Ish Chai and Chama Ovadia Yosef. He says, "Nachon lahachmir shelo lischot limon letoch kos teh cham shayad tzoled po, mipnei she'alimon nechshav davar charif shemavashel af bekli sheni." He says you shouldn't put lemon into a cup of tea. You shouldn't squeeze lemon into it. He says because lemon is considered something that cooks even in a kli sheni. So therefore, they don't like when you add lemon into the tea, right? So which is, that's tough for a lot of people because a lot of people like to do that. Now you could do it if you put it into a kli shlishi, according to this opinion, it would be okay because kli shlishi is one further step removed. However, listen to this leniency that Rabbi Ovadia Yosef says. He says, however, it's only if the tea is hot enough. He says, and how do you know if the tea is hot enough? If you'll drink it. If you'll drink it, then it's no longer too hot, and then you could put the lemon in. So he says, so if you know that you're about, so if the tea is so hot that you won't drink it, don't squeeze the lemon in. But if the tea is already, you're ready to drink it, then you could squeeze the lemon in, and so that allows for a big area of leniency in terms of that. Okay, let's go a little bit further. He says, "Asur latet tevalin al gabe marak or tavshil cham shayed zeledepo im odan ba'karash netbashlu ba al ha'esh." He says you can't put spices or salt or pepper or something like that on top of a soup while it's on the oven. But even if it's not on the oven, if it's in that kli rishon, you guys remember what the kli rishon is, right? As long as it's still hot, right? So again, the kli rishon, right? I'm going back to my my case here, right? Right, my kli rishon is what's on the fire, right? And hold on one second. I'm just trying to, right? The kli rishon is what's on the fire. And even if I took it off the fire, as long as it's still hot, I can't put spices, salt, or something into it because I'll be cooking those things.
Rabbi, just a question. Rabbi, you could take the kli rishon off of the fire on Shabbat?
Sure, we do it all the time, right? If you have a kettle that was on, a boiling hot water, you take it off, no problem. It happens all the time that we do that. Putting it back on might be a problem, but you could take it off.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Right. So it's not a problem to take it off. Okay. So we said, okay, so eat. Good. Now, what he does say is, however, if you took it off the fire, salt is different than all the other things that you would consider spices. And if it's not on the fire, salt would be allowed, right? So if you took soup off if you took you made a whole tureen of soup, right? And now you took it off the fire and you taste it a little bit and you see it's very hot, but you taste it a little bit and you see, it needs some salt. You could add salt in the main pot and mix it in, provided it's not on the fire. Nothing else, no other things, but salt he allows you to add on.
So Rabbi, he said no liquid. So how could you have soup on Shabbat day? You talking about Friday night?
This is Friday night, or it stayed on, all day or something like that. But so it's, you can't put that on the fire on Shabbat, but you could have had it on the fire from before, and then you would be able to add the salt. Okay. He says, if you poured the soup into a bowl, he says, then you could put whatever you want into the bowl, even though the bowl, meaning you already poured the soup into the bowl, and now you want to have, I don't know, dill or pepper or something into that, no problem. You could put that in because we look at those things and say they don't cook so easily, and so therefore it's not a problem. Okay. I'm going to stop here today because tomorrow's piece is already requires some explanation, and it's a concept. So I'm going to stop here today. Okay, great. Great to see everyone.
Can we add for the tea? I wanted to ask a question. Can we add honey?
So honey would be also yes, you can add honey because we don't consider honey as something that cooks quickly. Or anything like that, so it's okay. You can add honey to it. You could add milk to the coffee, provided it's in a secondary cup, right? Not on the fire, but on the secondary cup, you could add the milk.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. I'm gonna stop here with the class.